Hey, hey, hey. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. Listen, I am so glad y'all here. I was spending my week just really thinking about my friends who are um, FAMU alum. I can hardly believe what happened at FAMU regarding the appointment of their latest president. In fact, I think often about my friend Jim because Jim regularly likes to ask me about what's next. And I must say that right now, it's hard for me to think about what's next because for once in my life, I just the things that bring me joy and the things that the world needs, and also the things that happen to sustain me kind of align. And so when I think about what's next, it's like what you talking about, I'm having a good time, but it's always good to think about what's next. And one thing that he has regularly put in front of me is that I should consider being the president of an HBCU. And you know what I thought every time he said it? I thought, no way. Like, I don't have the qualifications to be a president of an HBCU. First of all, you probably should have taught at in higher ed. I've been an adjunct professor for one semester, and because I didn't have a student teacher, I really struggled to get through reading all the papers that I had asked people to write and getting those turned back in on time to give folks their grades. And so I was just like, dude, totally not qualified to lead an HBCU. But what's important to know is that on May 16th this year, FAMU's board voted 8-4 to select Marva Johnson as FAMU's president. And if you don't know, FAMU is the only historically Black college and university in the state of Florida. And um, what's also interesting is that there were several other qualified candidates, but the process was criticized because it wasn't considered to be transparent. But what we know about our dear sister Marva is that she has never worked in academia. She has worked at the policy level, but actually being on a university's campus and working, never. And I think it's important to know because I've been talking about Project 2025 for a couple of years now. And what was very clear in that document was that this is what was going to happen. And when I think about what Zelensky is going through in Ukraine, I still have that image in my mind of all those warships, those Russian warships surrounding the country of Ukraine. And folks are like, whatever. And then the next thing you know, and I mean, let me not say they were like, whatever. People were going about their daily life like nothing. And what I thought was interesting was that there were warships pointed at their country, like a whole little ring around, like in the sea. And then when they started shooting, folks was like, oh my God, I think we have an opportunity here still to get in front of this thing. But I saw an interview with former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, who used to be the mayor of Atlanta. And I don't know why they were asking her about this because she's the mayor of Atlanta in Georgia. And they were asking her about Johnson's appointment. And she was like, well, let's try to work with her. But knowing that she was added at the last minute, knowing that she was added by the governor, Ron DeSantis, it is important to know that this is politicized control of Black institutions. That's what this is going to be. And I know I run the risk every time I come on Filter Free Friday and I talk about things like HBCUs because people just can't seem to understand why would somebody whose focus is on leadership and development be talking about historically Black colleges and universities if they're not if their work is not that of DEI. I really don't understand, quite frankly, Black people who don't concern themselves with Black issues. I don't really understand Black folk who don't understand the need for a wide range of people, getting work done through a wide range of people, making sure those people feel included. I just don't understand that. I And I guess I shouldn't say I don't understand it. I don't share that sentiment. I went to North Carolina A&T State University. It's a historically Black college and university. It is the reason why I was able to do anything else I was able to do. And so when I think about something happening for another HBCU, I naturally think about what would I want to happen if it were me, and I would want people speaking up and out about this. And the collective Black voice was undermined. You had alumni, you had faculty, you had current students, former students who did not graduate, just saying, "Listen, this ain't the person." And they selected her anyway. And I'm curious about who the 8 were. Were they already stacked on the board? Like, and the strategic neutralization of radical potential is what happens when you have someone who is an assimilator at the helm of an HBCU. And here's what I mean. The beauty of an HBCU, see, people don't get this, is that you learn precisely what it's like to be in power. You learn precisely what it's like to recognize difference when everybody looks the same. You learn what it's like to move through the world when your race is not the issue. I might get in trouble for this, but you learn what it's like to be white. In a way, like when people say to me, they used to say this, they don't say it anymore. When they used to say things like, well, you don't want to go to an HBCU because you won't learn how things work in the real world. I learned exactly how things work in the real world by being the people in power in the real world. You see, when you can go into a classroom and you being smart is not the differentiator, because everybody's smart. When nobody is thinking that you're there because you got some specialized treatment, but that you're there because you want to learn. When your race is like, when folks say people at an HBCU, they mean Black people, and the Black is silent. You get to learn what it's like to move in the world when everything is built for you, right? And that's dangerous, you see, because that's a level of tactical empathy that then allows you to navigate differently, that then prevents you from being able to be convinced, because you saw for your own self for 4 years that there's something uniquely wrong with Black people. You can't accept it because you saw different. You see, there's nothing you can say. Like when Jim and I would talk, when we first met, there were all these things that he would say about HBCUs that were subtle, that suggested that somehow it was a lesser experience. And I used to be like, sir, absolutely not. You see, my teachers had a foundational expectation that no matter what my situation was, that I could excel and prosper. And I think one of the ways that we are sitting around eating brunch while the warships are pointed at us is that we wait until the issue is sitting solidly in our lap before we accept that there's something that we can do. You see, I was at lunch yesterday, and the business owner said, well, I like Donald Trump. His policies are good for me. I'm a businessman. Now, here's what's important to know. This businessman was actually a worker. The owner of that business was not him. So let's just start there. But let's say he was the owner. You're going to wait until there's some executive order that impacts your business before you say, oh, maybe we should care about these warships pointed our way. And see, that therein lies the issue. See, if any of us could sit and think about, okay, I am trying to pick the best candidate for an institution for which I care about. Do I want someone who has zero experience working in my industry? And I'm not saying leadership competencies are not transferable. But do I want someone who has a political affiliation that is completely opposite? Like 92% of Black women voted for Vice President Kamala Harris. Miss Miss Marva represents the 8%. Okay? She represents the 8%. Would you want somebody who represents 8% of half of your population being at the helm of your organization? Do you wait until there's a tariff that impacts the work that you need? Do you wait until you lose your government job? Do you wait until you get a disease that needs to be researched and then only find out that the National Institute of Health has been dismantled in whatever cutting edge innovative strategies they have? There's no more funding from the federal government. Do you wait until that's sitting in your lap? Because the warships are all there, right? And while it might look like I'm talking about things that impact direct just Black people, no, that's not it. I'm like the folks in Ukraine, the few who were going, look, man, that's a warship pointed at us. It's a warship. You see, homicides are up in Kansas City, and I maintain that the Northland is driving those numbers up because we last year their numbers were so low that they did not impact the numbers positively at all. And this year they are upwards around 12 homicides, and so therefore our whole city's homicide numbers are up. Domestic violence is what's driving those numbers. This is what has been said by the folks who put the data out. This is not Nicole's opinion. And when I watch what is happening on the national stage in the P. Diddy trial, which for some ridiculous reason, I'm following this way more closely than I should be. By the way, I got other stuff I should be doing, like removing lint balls from my jacket. You know, I can't buy nothing. This is one of my favorite jackets, and it had lint balls on it. If you don't have one of these lint ball removers, listen, I violated my buying thing to get one of these lint ball removers. But anyway, I'm following this case way too much. But what sticks out about it to me is that no matter what is being said, no matter what post I observe, there's always going to be a comment by a woman of color, saying, why didn't she just leave? And so I think this ties to Marva over at FAMU in this way, because you might look at her and go, oh yeah, Marva Johnson should be leading an HBCU because she is Black and because she's female. But the person who looks at a domestic violence victim and who shares the same demographics as that person and says, why didn't they leave? For me, doesn't understand the story that I just heard yesterday. It was a therapist who was recounting being at the police station for something that was a non-emergency. And she said while she was in there, she saw a woman with a Black eye who was going to report a domestic violence situation in which she had a restraining order. So clearly the assailant had violated the restraining order. And she was met with impatience, indifference, lots of questions about who she was, versus asking questions about what happened to her and how they could be helpful. Now, I understand how when you're in the line of fire that the job is stressful. But when you're sitting behind a desk and people are walking in, is your bandwidth that low? To shorten the story, the woman walks out, Black eye, frustrated, not helped. And this social worker was just beyond herself frustrated. And she was like, we need more empathy. And I believe in this case, it is absolutely true. Because can you imagine if that were a man who was being abused? Would he even go? Would he even say anything to anybody? And when you think about people who won't walk away, what does this one story represent? When I go someplace and folk won't even help me, when I'm the one who's going to be the villain here. Like, to me, it's just so simple. Keep your hands to yourself. It's a very simple concept. Just like it's a very simple concept that you can't just take over people's countries. People live there. It was true centuries ago for the Native Americans. It's true now with Russia and Ukraine. It's true now for us talking about Canada being the 51st state. You can't just take people's stuff. Like, what are we even talking about? It's also true when we're talking about qualifications for jobs. We start picking up these narratives, and I'm telling you, it's like warships circling countries that don't belong to us. We start saying, well, you don't need a college degree. Well, you don't. But certainly you think you need it for something, right? Like, have you ever sat in a room with someone who has not had any kind of advanced learning on their craft? You're a beautician, you got natural talent, you can do hair. But it's in school where you learn not to burn my scalp. It's in school where you learn which chemicals not to mix together. It's in school where you learn the way to put the cape around my neck so that I don't have the cape all in my face. It's in school where you learn the customer service components. It's in school where you learn how the business runs. Yeah, you don't need an advanced education, but it teaches you something different. When I listen to a police officer who happens to have a leadership role talking about Black on Black crime, it just helps me to understand that that person has had no advanced study in racial equity and anti-racist ideas, because every homicide is typically between people of the same race because of how insular our systems are. Our communal systems are very segregated by race here in this country. So no matter my race, I'm likely to be killed, especially in a domestic violence situation, by someone who looks just like me. Those kinds of things you don't learn at the base level. Listen, I had an engineering degree, absolutely was unqualified when I moved into learning and development, got placed in that job without the qualifications. I had the natural skill, but did not have the qualifications. This is just me. I value intellection. So I went to school to get my degree in adult learning. You know what I learned there? That there is a way to set up a room to get people to talk more. That there is a way to set up a room to make people think that you are the person in power. I learned that there are ways to teach adults versus teaching children, and that's different. I learned that adults who are bringing a certain amount of lived experience into a space trust you more when you have the ability to ask questions, to be a facilitator rather than a lecturer. It was there that I learned, how do you make sure that if somebody is like forced to come to a class, to help them feel engaged, just like everybody else. That's where I learned how you gauge whether or not the training is working versus not working. How do you create a Likert exam or the Likert scale? How do you do that? Was I already good at teaching? Yeah, but it was higher education that took me to the next level. This idea that some students just can't learn and they can be technicians. Man, listen, right now, I got a toilet on my main level that is leaking because I feel like the plumber I chose didn't get enough of that advanced education. And let me tell you, it is not such that just the people who cannot, you think cannot learn at these higher levels shouldn't go to higher ed. It is, what if I'm incredibly smart and bright and I love things like working with my hands, and so therefore love things like plumbing and welding? I want that student. I want that person, because you know what? They're probably always going to be advancing themselves and advancing their craft. Why am I bringing that up when I'm talking about warships circling? There are so many things that are just like putting a frog in the water, and just the poor frog, the water is cold, it's just sitting there, and you just keep turning up the heat, turn up the heat, turn up the heat till the dang water boiling and kills the frog, and the frog never jumped out. When you are spewing these thoughts like, well, God qualifies me. Well, perhaps God did qualify you, but you might want to take a divinity class or so. So you're not in the pulpit further traumatizing people who have been in domestic violence situations, further saying things like, why didn't they just leave? And the Holy Spirit of discernment will keep you out of these situations. It's bullying from the pulpit, actually. You see, perhaps you should think about what it means to understand trauma so that you are not further traumatizing people by bringing up the one thing that they might have shame and embarrassment about. Maybe. All I know is I don't have all the answers, but I know how to read the tea leaves, honey. That's what one of my first executive coaches used to say to me all the time: Nicole, read the room, read the tea leaves, pay attention to what's being said, what's not being said. And when you have a board of a historically Black college and university of 12 people, 8 of them vote for a person who does not qualify. In a red state, when HBCUs get all of their most of their funding from the state level, who has completely aligned with a political ideology that would likely be against greater than 90% of its students, alumni, donors, etc. Houston, we have a problem. The warships are circling. And when you got the likes of Harvard with their massive endowments being attacked in this way, what does this mean for HBCUs? When in Project 2025, the playbook was very simple. What we're going to do is destabilize. We're going to take away books. You're not going to teach about the history. You know, when I saw the Nottoway plantation burning down, this is my final thought. When I saw the Nottoway plantation burning down, all I could think about was the craftsmen, the Black craftsmen who put so much work into that building, that edifice, and how unfortunate it is, or was, because the plantation is gone, that we could not honor the history and tell the story of racial terror, pillage, and sacrifice of the place, but rather ignored it all, put up some beautiful flowers, and had weddings there instead. It's a very interesting indictment of us. But so is watching a woman getting brutally beaten on video and then redirecting our energy towards the scapegoat of, well, she was a freak. So is looking away from the very racist ideas in these executive orders, the crushing that's happening for the everyday American, and especially those who are impoverished by most of these executive orders, the placement of people who are not qualified, and yet continually being told that meritocracy is what is valued. It's hypocrisy. Because if it were us, me standing in the lobby of a police station with a black eye, I'd want different treatment. If it was me having to report to the president of an institution, I would want someone who's qualified. There's water rolling around on my floor, around the toilet. I want someone who has an increased level of customer service, understands that they got to lift that toilet and change the wax ring. And if that don't work, it must be something else. When it's us, we value competence. I see the way we yell at people when we don't get customer service we think we deserve at restaurants. How frustrated people become waiting in line at the DMV. You know competence matters. You know you value people who are good at their jobs. And yet here we are. It's happening in Florida, FAMU, so ain't got nothing to do with me, I guess. This idea of putting your head down until it shows up at your doorstep. I want you to just Google some pictures of Ukraine right now and tell me how you think that's going to work for you. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. We got plenty work to do.